In today's world, there's a lot of people who are hoping to start a YouTube channel. They've seen lots of other content creators online making lots of money, potentially becoming famous, living luxurious lives with fancy cars and trips all over the world. And it's really easy to watch these people and want to become one of them. Being a content creator, being an entrepreneur, being a YouTuber is not for everyone. And I think that sometimes people follow the shiny things and don't realize the reality of what it really means to do this job. And I think it's not just the fact that it's hard or there's pressure, but there's just things about being an entrepreneur that I don't think everyone should be an entrepreneur. And I think in today's world, it used to be like the ideal dream was having, a white picket fence and owning a home and having a couple of kids and raising a family and things like that. So nowadays, though, it seems that the ideal dream for many people is having freedom, like freedom to travel the world, freedom to be your own boss, freedom to work when you want, and how often you want. And there's this really push, and I feel like especially those who maybe are thinking about starting one of these endeavors, there's really a huge push, and these thoughts might come into your head as you watch all these things. At least this is what's happened to me. Is I've really noticed that the more content I watch on these things, the more I feel like I've got to have that too. And as I've started my content journey myself with this YouTube channel and some other YouTube channels that I've been trying to get started, I've had to kind of really think about what is it that I want, and is this really a good option? Is YouTube a good option? In my experience, I grew up, my parents ran a small business for a number of years. And one of the biggest things that I noticed about them is that they were always working. There was never really being off the clock. You have, depending on whatever business you're working on, you have maybe certain times where you're really on. My family did some trade show events that they did as part of their business. And so they were very much on during those times, but even when they weren't doing those things, they were always constantly thinking about business, having conversations about business. And it's really easy for those things to just take over your life. Like you're doing those things on the weekends, in the evenings, in the mornings. And I've realized that for a lot of people who want to be entrepreneurs and creators, especially those that have a 9-to-5 office job, a lot of them talk about how they can't wait to get out of their job, and they're just grinding, and they hate what they're doing, and they're stressed, and they never have any time for themselves. And they're hoping that being a YouTuber will give them that time back. And while I do think it creates a lot of flexibility in your time, I think the reality is that being a YouTuber and being an entrepreneur is really a full-time thing. There's no weekends, there's no holidays, you're always on to some extent. And some people may be able to kind of create some boundaries, and I think that is healthy if you can try to create certain boundaries. But the reality is that I just don't want people to think that, being this content creator, it doesn't always mean a lot more freedom. It sometimes really means that you're always constantly on. And some people like that. If you are someone who's really invested in the projects that you're working on, and that you can work on them in the weekends and the holidays and be thinking about them all throughout the day, then maybe this is definitely something for you, if that's something that excites you. But if you're someone who's really looking to just escape their corporate role or other 9-to-5 job in order to have more freedom, I want to kind of caution you on really thinking what that freedom actually means for you. Because just based on not only looking at my parents, but other business owners, that's one thing that I had to think about a lot before deciding that I wanted to kind of do my own thing and do some entrepreneurship stuff. Because originally I had thought, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to always be on. I don't want to always be working. And so one reason why you should not become a YouTuber is if you're concerned about working a lot, because especially in the beginning, you're going to need to. And really just being any kind of business owner, it's something that's going to be constantly on your mind because it's all about you. You don't just clock out and forget about it. You're not like all the business is yours. There's a lot to think about and there's a lot to care about, more so than if you're just working for someone else. So that's one reason why being a content creator is not all it's cracked up to be. And then going along those lines with always being working, I see a lot, and maybe you have too, there are a lot of content creators who are burning out, who are quitting YouTube. There's, in particular with YouTube, there's this constant pressure that you always have to be putting out content, putting out videos, in order to sustain your audience. And there's never really any like vacation, right? Like if you stop working, it's not like a normal job where, you stop and you take PTO and you get paid for your, taking time off. No, like if you don't work and you don't make content, then you could potentially not get paid and, not be able to feed your family. And so that's something to kind of consider, is just that you are probably going to be constantly working. And really that goes along with my first point. It's hard to have time off, and it is easy to get burned out from constantly making videos, but also burned out with dealing with people, which also brings me to the next thing. Like sometimes people want to quit their corporate job because they don't like their boss. They don't like working for someone else. Well, a large part of being a creator is working for your audiences. So you constantly are figuring out like what your audiences want, what they don't want, how to provide that value to them. And so you may not have like one boss or one manager that's sitting over your shoulder telling you what to do. But in another sense, you still have someone that you're responsible to report to. And that's your audiences. That's your community that you're building. And so I think, again, I just think that there are so many people that want to get rid of their 9-to-5 and don't realize that some of those pressures are still going to be there in content creation. They're just going to be there in another way. And then another one is along those lines, again, going back to this theme of like a corporate culture and, having a 9-to-5 and how in some ways it's very similar to YouTube, is like YouTube is very much in many ways a desk job. Now, some of you may argue, well, no, you could be running around the world videotaping content and things, but there's a lot of work to be done normally in front of computers. And this is going to depend on like what kind of teams you have helping you, but especially as a solo creator, you're going to be spending a lot of time in front of your computer, like working on editing videos, preparing thumbnails, potentially writing full scripts or outlines for your content. You're going to be doing research on other videos. You're going to be doing stuff to upload your videos. And so all that stuff is going to be done on a computer. For me, I work as an accountant and I spend a lot of time on the computer as it is. And sometimes on the weekends, I'll work on my YouTube channel. And the day will feel just like it does in my corporate job in some ways, because I'm sitting behind my desk working on things. It's just instead of working on spreadsheets, I'm working on videos and thumbnails and whatnot. And so I think that that's something that people don't think about enough. If you're someone that doesn't like desk work, then there might be a lot of parts about being a content creator that you don't actually love. And then again, going along those lines is being a YouTuber can be pretty lonely. I know myself, I'm pretty extroverted. I like being around people. Definitely don't need to be the center of attention, but definitely like being around people. But YouTube is definitely a pretty solo gig if you don't have a team. It can be really lonely. To do all these things, to edit your videos, to record your videos, to prepare everything. And so it's a lot of time on your own. And I think that could be hard for people. If you have a job that you are, constantly around other people, and you decide to quit to become a full-time YouTuber, and now you're sitting at home doing your YouTube videos, you may lose some of that social connection. And in some ways, you'll gain some social interaction online, through people. And again, there's all kind of opportunities to connect with other fellow YouTubers and stuff, especially as you become more successful and reach out to others. But ultimately, being a YouTuber, especially in the beginning, can be a pretty solo gig. And so I think that's another thing that you got to really think about. Like, are you okay, like, working on your own by yourself for long periods of time? Because that's part of being a content creator. And then another thing is just there's a lot of instability with being a content creator. And, I think people underestimate the niceness of having like a steady job with a very steady paycheck that comes in. You've got your health insurance, you're getting paid every week or biweekly or monthly or however your pay is set up. You have that steady income and you know what to expect for at least for many like office type jobs. Maybe for certain jobs, it's a little bit more variable, like maybe you're a waiter or something like that. But in general, you can kind of know somewhat of what you are expected to receive. And also, that if you work, you're going to get paid. Whereas being a YouTuber, like you could work 1,000,000 hours. And if your content doesn't work out, you may not receive a dime for that. You may not receive any money for that at all. And you also have to worry about, you just have to worry about I lost my train of thought here, but you don't have that steady flow of income. So, your revenues could go up a lot one day and really down the next. I haven't reached monetization at the time of making this video yet, but I can say that, from what I've heard, ad revenue can be very up and down, and sponsorships can be up and down. And, when you if you're selling a personal products, like it depends on how many people are buying that day or that week or that month. And so sometimes it can be really unpredictable about your income. And so if that's something that sounds stressful for you, YouTube again may not be the right choice for you. And then like other things, like you don't have health insurance, like, and those are just things that aren't just a YouTube issue, but that's just something about self-employment. Like you have to provide those things for yourself in a different capacity. And so those can result in other hidden costs when you have to maybe pay more to self-insure yourself. You've got different like self-employment taxes you have to think about. Here's my accountant brain coming on, but you've got tax implications and health implications and different revenue going up and down implications. And so there's a lot of uncertainty. And even with going into the whole uncertainty, like, yes, having a regular job can be uncertain because you could be fired at any moment. Well, and, online things can happen too. Like maybe your platform goes down, maybe you get banned or something happens, maybe you get hacked and you lose things that you were working on. Maybe different like algorithms change and it greatly affects the audiences that you are able to pull into your content. And so there's like a lot of stuff there that can lead to a lot of different variables and a lot of room for change and errors. And so these are just all some things that's important to kind of consider when you're really thinking about whether this like content creation is for you. And to think beyond some of the like bells and whistles that you always see online about how great being a content creator is. And really, my idea for this video is not really to necessarily dissuade you from becoming a content creator. I still think, I'm trying to do it myself. So I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm just saying like know what you're getting into, because there's nothing worse than putting in so much time and effort and money and emotional, like so much emotion into these things to, realize at the end of at the finish line that it's not something that you really want to do. And so if those things are things that sound not exciting to you, then, maybe the answer isn't to become a content creator. Maybe the answer is to look for a different job where you work less hours, or to go back to school to try to get a degree to help you get a profession that makes more money if you're struggling financially. There are a lot of options out there besides becoming an entrepreneur. And so I think being an entrepreneur is amazing. I think that there are so many cool things. And I recently made a video about why you should start a YouTube channel. And I still think in many instances that is something you should absolutely do. But I felt the need to kind of point out some of the flaws behind this dream of becoming a YouTuber. Because I think those are things you should really, really consider before you take on this journey. And it's okay if it's not for you, but if it is, great, know those things, figure out how you're going to tackle some of those negatives, and then move forward and get excited. Because if you're someone who still wants to do it after all that, then go for it. There's so many rewarding things. I'd love to hear, do you still want to become a YouTuber? I'm excited for your journey as I continue to document my journey. My goal is to try to make a video every single week documenting my journey as I strive to learn things about YouTube and some of the different thoughts and things that I'm learning with another channel I'm making that's related to accounting, related to my profession, and then also making this and some other side projects. I think there's a lot that I'm still learning, and I hope to share some of those lessons to help you guys and to start those conversations so that we can all grow together.